The rain drummed steadily against the windows of Melody's Bistro, the small restaurant tucked away on a quiet corner of downtown Chicago. Inside, the warm amber lighting cast gentle shadows across empty tables set with white linens and flickering candles. It was Tuesday evening, and the dinner crowd had long since departed, leaving behind only the lingering aroma of garlic and herbs, and the soft jazz playing from speakers mounted discreetly in the corners. Peter Cetera sat alone at table 12, the same corner booth where he had eaten countless meals over the past 3 years since purchasing this struggling establishment. His silver hair was slightly disheveled from running his fingers through it, a nervous habit he'd developed since his world had begun crumbling around him. The restaurant, once his pride and joy, had become a financial albatross that threatened to drag him into complete ruin. At 69 years old, Peter had invested his remaining savings into Melody's Bistro, hoping to create something meaningful in his golden years. The place held special significance. It was where he had shared his first date with his late wife Sarah, back when it was called Giovanni's and served the best Italian food on the South Side. After Sarah's passing 5 years ago, buying the restaurant had felt like preserving a sacred memory. But dreams and nostalgia don't pay the bills. The location that had once thrived with neighborhood charm now sat in the shadow of gleaming high-rises filled with tech companies and upscale condominiums. The new residents preferred trendy fusion cuisine and Instagram-worthy presentations over the honest comfort food that Melody's offered. Monthly revenues had steadily declined, and Peter found himself facing the very real possibility of losing everything he had worked to build. The front door chimed, and Peter looked up to see 3 impeccably dressed men in their 40s entering the restaurant. Their expensive suits were perfectly tailored, their watches caught the light with Swiss precision, and they carried themselves with a confidence that comes from never having been told no. Peter recognized them immediately. Marcus Webb, Jonathan Price, and David Sterling, the real estate developers who had been circling Melody's like vultures for the past 6 months. "Mr. Cetera," Marcus called out with false joviality, his voice echoing in the nearly empty dining room. "I hope we're not too late for dinner. We have some business to discuss." Peter stood slowly, straightening his simple black polo shirt and wiping his palms on his jeans. These men represented everything he had grown to despise about the new Chicago. Money without soul, success without substance, progress without consideration for what was being destroyed in the process. "Gentlemen," Peter replied with as much dignity as he could muster. "We close at 9, but I suppose I can have the kitchen prepare something simple." The 3 men settled into a large booth near the front window, making no effort to lower their voices as they discussed their plans for the building. They spoke of maximizing square footage and optimizing rental yields, as if Peter weren't standing just 20 feet away, as if his life's work were nothing more than numbers on a spreadsheet. "The old man's got to be desperate by now," Jonathan said, not bothering to whisper. "This place has been bleeding money for months. We make him a lowball offer, he'll have to take it." "The location is perfect for luxury condos," David added, pulling out his phone to show his companion's architectural renderings. "Tear down this relic, put up a 30-story tower, each unit selling for $500,000 minimum." Peter felt his face flushed with anger and humiliation. But he forced himself to remain professional. He needed every customer he could get, even these parasites who saw his beloved restaurant as nothing more than an obstacle to their profits. As he walked toward their table to take their order, the front door chimed again. A young woman entered, shaking raindrops from her worn denim jacket. She carried an insulated food delivery bag and looked around the restaurant uncertainly, clearly unfamiliar with the upscale atmosphere despite its current emptiness. Carmen Rodriguez was 28 years old and had been working for a food delivery service for the past 8 months, ever since losing her job as a music teacher when the local school district faced budget cuts. The work was hard on her 20-year-old Honda Civic, and even harder on her pride. But it paid the bills while she searched for another teaching position. "Excuse me," Carmen said softly, approaching Peter. "I have an order for pickup." Under the name Webb? Marcus looked up from his phone with obvious annoyance. Finally, do you have any idea how long we've been waiting? This is completely unacceptable service. Carmen checked her phone, confusion crossing her features. Sir, I received the order just 15 minutes ago, and I came straight here. The app shows I'm actually 2 minutes early. Don't argue with me, Marcus snapped, his voice rising. Time is money, and your incompetence has cost us both. Where's your supervisor? I want to file a complaint. Peter watched the exchange with growing discomfort. He had prepared the takeout order himself. 3 expensive steaks with sides, totaling over $100. And he knew Marcus was lying about the timing. The order had indeed been placed just 20 minutes earlier. I'm sorry if there was any confusion, Carmen replied, maintaining her composure despite the clear hostility. Let me just verify the order with you to make sure everything is correct. As she began reading from her phone, Jonathan interrupted with a cruel laugh. Look at this, guys. They're sending children to do adult jobs now. What are you, maybe 19, 20? Did you even finish high school? Carmen's cheeks burned with embarrassment, but she kept her voice steady. I'm 28, sir, and I have a master's degree in music education. I'm just working delivery while I look for a new teaching position. Music education? David chimed in mockingly. What's next? A PhD in finger painting? No wonder you're reduced to driving food around. Maybe if you'd studied something useful, you wouldn't be in this situation. The 3 men erupted in laughter at their perceived cleverness, and Peter felt something snap inside him. These weren't just wealthy bullies anymore. They were attacking a young woman who was clearly doing honest work to support herself, showing more integrity in her temporary job than they had displayed in their entire conversation about destroying his restaurant. Gentlemen, that's enough, Peter said firmly, stepping closer to their table. Miss... I'm sorry I didn't catch your name. Rodriguez, Carmen Rodriguez, she replied, grateful for the intervention. Ms. Rodriguez is a customer in my establishment, and she deserves to be treated with respect. I'd appreciate it if you would apologize for your inappropriate comments. Marcus stood up slowly, his face darkening with anger. Excuse me, old man? Did you just tell me to apologize to the help? Do you have any idea who you're talking to? We're about to make you a very generous offer for this failing dump, but keep running your mouth and that offer might just disappear. The restaurant fell silent except for the gentle jazz music and the sound of rain against the windows. Carmen stood frozen, clutching her delivery bag, clearly wishing she could disappear. Peter felt the weight of the moment, his financial future hanging in the balance, his pride warring with his practical need to survive. But as he looked at Carmen's face, saw the dignity with which she carried herself despite the cruel treatment, he thought about Sarah and the values she had always embodied. She would have never allowed anyone to be humiliated in their presence without speaking up, regardless of the personal cost. You're right, Peter said quietly. I don't know who you are, but I know who I am, and I won't stand by while you treat this young lady with disrespect in my restaurant. He turned to Carmen with genuine warmth. Ms. Rodriguez, I apologize for their behavior. The order is ready, and there's no charge tonight. Consider it my way of making up for what you've had to endure. Carmen's eyes widened in surprise. Mr. Cetra, that's very kind. But you don't need to... Please, Peter insisted. It would be my honor. Marcus slammed his hand on the table, causing the water glasses to jump. You just made the biggest mistake of your life, Cetra. That offer I mentioned? Consider it withdrawn. We'll get this property one way or another, and when we do, we'll make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of business you ran here. The 3 men stormed out of the restaurant, leaving their harsh words hanging in the air like smoke. Peter watched them go, feeling simultaneously liberated and terrified. He had just alienated the only potential buyers who had shown any interest in his struggling business. Carmen remained standing near the table, clearly shaken by the encounter. Mr. Cetra, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to cause any problems for you. Those men seemed important, and now... Those men are exactly the kind of people this world would be better off without. Peter interrupted gently. You have nothing to apologize for, Carmen. Nothing at all. As he walked to the kitchen to retrieve the takeout order, Peter found himself studying this young woman more carefully. There was something about her bearing, the way she had maintained her dignity under attack, that reminded him of Sarah. But more than that, he noticed the small details that spoke to her character. The way she had instinctively straightened the menus on a nearby table, the careful manner in which she handled her delivery bag, the genuine concern in her voice when she apologized for the confrontation. Here's your order, Peter said, returning with the bag. Again, no charge. It's the least I can do. Carmen accepted the food but made no move to leave. Instead, she looked around the restaurant with obvious appreciation. This is a beautiful place. I've driven past it dozens of times but never been inside. It has such a warm feeling to it. Thank you, Peter replied, surprised by her comment. It means a lot to hear that, especially tonight. My wife and I had our first date here back in 1978 when it was called Giovanni's. I bought it 3 years ago, thinking I could recapture some of that magic. Your wife has excellent taste, Carmen said with a smile. There's something special about places that hold good memories. You can feel it in the atmosphere. She passed away 5 years ago, Peter said softly. Cancer. This restaurant is, well, it's my way of keeping that part of our life alive. Carmen's expression immediately softened with sympathy. I'm so sorry for your loss. I can tell this place means everything to you. The care you put into it shows in every detail. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, both lost in their own thoughts. Finally, Carmen shifted the delivery bag to her other hand and prepared to leave. Mr. Cetra, can I ask you something? Those men who were just here, are they really going to cause problems for you? They seemed vindictive. Peter sighed deeply, suddenly feeling every one of his 69 years. They're developers who want to buy this building and tear it down. I've been struggling financially, and they know it. Tonight might have been my last chance to sell before the bank forecloses. But you stood up for me anyway, Carmen said, her voice filled with wonder, even knowing it might cost you everything. Some things are more important than money, Peter replied. My Sarah taught me that. She would have been proud of what happened here tonight, even if it means losing the restaurant. Carmen was quiet for a long moment, her mind clearly working through something complex. Finally, she spoke again, her voice hesitant but determined. Mr. Cetra, I need to tell you something. Those men who just left, I know who they are, Marcus Webb especially. He's been trying to buy property all over this neighborhood, and there have been rumors about his methods. Peter looked at her with surprise. What kind of rumors? I have a friend who works at City Hall, in the permit office. She's mentioned Webb's name several times, always in connection with properties that suddenly face mysterious code violations or health department issues right before he makes his offers. Buildings that have been fine for years suddenly need expensive repairs that force owners to sell. The implications of Carmen's words hit Peter like a physical blow. Are you saying he might try to sabotage my restaurant? I'm saying he has a pattern, Carmen replied carefully. And after what happened tonight, you might want to be extra careful about any surprise inspections or violations that seem to come out of nowhere. Peter felt a chill that had nothing to do with the rain outside. If Webb was as unethical as Carmen suggested, standing up to him tonight might have consequences far worse than simply losing a potential sale. Why are you telling me this? Peter asked. You don't even know me. Carmen looked directly at him, her dark eyes filled with sincerity. Because you defended me when you didn't have to. Because you showed me kindness when those men showed me cruelty. Because sometimes the right thing to do is to protect good people from bad ones." She paused, then continued with growing conviction. "And because I know what it's like to lose something you love through no fault of your own. When I lost my teaching job, it felt like my whole identity disappeared overnight. I can't imagine losing a place that holds memories of your wife." Peter felt tears threatening to form in his eyes. This young woman, who had been treated terribly in his restaurant, was now trying to protect him from further harm. The generosity of spirit she displayed was overwhelming. "Carmen, I don't know how to thank you for the warning, but I'm not sure what I can do with the information. I can't prove anything, and even if I could, I don't have the resources to fight someone like Webb." Carmen was quiet again, clearly thinking. Then, unexpectedly, she smiled. Not a happy smile, but one filled with determination and perhaps a touch of mischief. "Mr. Cetera, what if I told you there might be another way? What if instead of trying to fight Webb on his terms, we found a way to make your restaurant so successful that you wouldn't need his offer?" Peter laughed, but not unkindly. "Carmen, I appreciate your optimism, but this place has been struggling for 3 years. I don't think there's any magic solution that's going to turn things around overnight." "Maybe not magic," Carmen agreed. "But what about music?" Peter looked at her with confusion. "Music?" "You're Peter Cetera," Carmen said simply. "You might be trying to live quietly now, but you're still a legend. Chicago, hard to say I'm sorry. Glory of love. Your songs were the soundtrack to millions of people's lives, including mine." Peter stared at her in shock. Throughout the entire encounter with Webb and his associates, throughout their conversation about the restaurant and her warning about Webb's methods, Carmen had never once indicated that she knew who he was. She had treated him simply as a kind restaurant owner, not as a celebrity or former rock star. "You knew who I was this whole time?" Peter asked. "Of course I knew," Carmen replied with a gentle smile. "Your voice is unmistakable, even when you're just talking. But more than that, your music got me through some very difficult times. When my father was deployed overseas, when my grandmother was dying, when I was struggling through graduate school, your songs were always there." She paused, looking slightly embarrassed. "I actually wrote my master's thesis on the emotional impact of popular music in educational settings. I used several of your songs as examples of how music can convey complex emotions that traditional teaching methods sometimes can't reach." Peter sat down heavily in the nearest chair, overwhelmed by this revelation. "Carmen, why didn't you say anything earlier?" "Because you clearly wanted to be treated like a normal person running a restaurant, not like a celebrity," she replied. "You deserve that respect. But now, knowing what you're facing with Webb, maybe it's time to remind this neighborhood who Peter Cetera really is." The idea that began forming in Carmen's mind was ambitious and risky, but it came from a place of genuine admiration and fierce protectiveness for this man who had shown her such unexpected kindness. "What if we organized a concert?" she suggested, her excitement growing as she spoke. "Nothing huge or commercial, just an intimate evening of music right here in the restaurant. Advertise it to your generation, the people who grew up with your songs. Create an event so special that it puts Melody's Bistro on the map in a way Webb never expected." Peter shook his head slowly. "Carmen, I haven't performed in public in over 5 years. I'm not sure I could even—" "You wouldn't have to do it alone," Carmen interrupted. "I told you I'm a music teacher. I could help with the arrangements, maybe even accompany you on piano or guitar. We could make it about the music, about the memories, about bringing people together in this beautiful space you've created." The more she talked, the more animated Carmen became, and Peter found himself caught up in her enthusiasm despite his reservations. There was something infectious about her energy, her genuine belief that music could solve problems and bring people together. Even if I agreed to try this, Peter said slowly, how would we possibly organize something like that? I don't have connections in the music industry anymore, and the restaurant's marketing budget is basically non-existent. Carmen smiled, pulling out her phone. Mr. Cetra, you might not have industry connections, but you have something more valuable. You have fans, real fans who have been listening to your music for decades. Let me show you something. She quickly navigated to various social media platforms, showing Peter fan pages and tribute sites dedicated to his music. There were thousands of comments from people sharing personal stories about how his songs had impacted their lives, photos from concerts decades past, and countless requests for him to perform again. These people have been looking for you, Carmen said softly. They've been hoping for just one more chance to hear you sing live. Not in some massive arena, but somewhere intimate where they can really connect with the music and the man who created it. Peter studied the phone screen with growing amazement. He had deliberately avoided social media and online platforms since Sarah's death, preferring to grieve privately and live quietly. He had no idea that people were still discussing his music, still sharing stories about its impact on their lives. Look at this comment. Carmen pointed to the screen. Peter Cetera's music saved my marriage. We danced to Hard to Say I'm Sorry at our wedding. And whenever we fight, we put on that song and remember why we fell in love. And this one? Glory of Love got me through my son's deployment in Afghanistan. Every time I was scared, I'd listen to that song and know that love is stronger than fear. Peter felt tears forming in his eyes as Carmen scrolled through dozens of similar comments. These weren't casual fans looking for entertainment. These were people whose lives had been genuinely touched by his music, who saw his songs as soundtracks to their most important memories. You see, Carmen said gently, you don't need Webb's money or his approval. You have something much more valuable. You have people who love you and your music. We just need to bring them here. For the first time in months, Peter felt a spark of hope, not just for saving the restaurant, but for reconnecting with the part of himself he had put away when Sarah died. Music had always been his way of processing emotion, of connecting with others, of making sense of the world. Maybe it was time to remember that gift. Carmen, he said slowly, if we were going to try something like this, how would we even begin? Her face lit up with excitement. Leave that to me. I know people, other teachers, musicians, social media volunteers. We can create a grassroots campaign that reaches exactly the right audience. But more importantly, we can create an evening that's about more than just a concert. We can make it about community, about supporting local businesses, about showing people like Webb that some things can't be bought or demolished. Peter looked around his empty restaurant, imagining it filled with people who had grown up with his music, people who understood the emotional weight of songs like If You Leave Me Now and You're the Inspiration. He pictured Carmen at the piano, her fingers finding melodies that would blend perfectly with his voice, creating something new from something treasured. There's just one condition, Peter said, his voice growing stronger with conviction. If we do this, it can't be about saving me or the restaurant. It has to be about the music and the people who love it. And Carmen, if this works, if people actually come and we manage to turn things around, I want you to be part of it. What do you mean? Carmen asked. I mean, I want to offer you a job, Peter replied. Not as a delivery driver, but as what you really are, a music teacher. We could start a music program here at the restaurant. Evening lessons for adults, maybe some small performances by local students. Turn this place into a real community center for people who believe music can change lives. Carmen stared at him in amazement. Mr. Cetra, you can't be serious. You barely know me and you're facing financial problems. How could you possibly? Because tonight, you showed me something I had forgotten. Peter interrupted. You showed me that kindness matters more than profit. That standing up for what's right is worth any cost. and that music is meant to be shared, not hoarded. If we can save this place, it should be a place where those values matter. Carmen felt tears welling up in her eyes. For 8 months, she had been driving around the city delivering other people's meals, feeling like her education and passion were being wasted. Now, this man who had defended her against cruel strangers was offering her a chance to return to her true calling. Yes, she said simply. Yes to all of it. The concert, the job, the music program. Yes to showing Webb and people like him that there are more important things than money and development deals. They shook hands across the empty restaurant, sealing a partnership that neither of them could have imagined when Carmen first walked through the door with a delivery order. Outside, the rain continued to fall, but inside Melody's bistro, something new was beginning to grow. Over the next 3 weeks, Carmen threw herself into organizing what they decided to call an evening with Peter Cetra, songs and stories at Melody's bistro. Using her network of fellow teachers and musicians, she created a social media campaign that spread organically through online communities of Chicago fans and classic rock enthusiasts. The response was overwhelming. Within days of the first announcement, the small event had sold out its 50 seats. Requests for additional nights poured in from across the country, with people offering to travel to Chicago just for the chance to hear Peter perform in such an intimate setting. But the real magic happened during the rehearsals. Carmen proved to be an intuitive and skilled accompanist, able to follow Peter's musical instincts and add subtle harmonies that enhanced rather than competed with his vocals. More importantly, she helped him remember why he had fallen in love with music in the first place. Not for fame or commercial success, but for the pure joy of connecting with other human beings through song. "You know," Peter said during one evening rehearsal, "I haven't felt this excited about performing since Sarah was alive. She always said that music was meant to be medicine, that the right song at the right moment could heal things that doctors couldn't touch." Carmen smiled as her fingers found the opening chords to "You're the Inspiration." She sounds like she was a wise woman. I think she would have loved what we're doing here. "She would have loved you," Peter replied without hesitation. "You have the same spirit she did, the same belief that kindness and music can make the world better." The night of the concert arrived with an electricity that neither Peter nor Carmen had anticipated. The 50 guests who filled Melody's bistro weren't just fans. They were people whose lives had been soundtracked by Peter's music for decades. There were couples who had been married 40 years and still danced to "Hard to Say I'm Sorry." Veterans who had found comfort in "Glory of Love" during difficult deployments, and parents who had sung their children to sleep with "If You Leave Me Now." But the evening's most powerful moment came when Peter invited Carmen to join him for a duet of "You're the Inspiration." As their voices blended together, accompanied by Carmen's delicate piano work, something magical happened in the small restaurant. The barriers between performer and audience dissolved, and for 3 minutes, everyone in the room was part of the same emotional experience. The concert raised enough money to keep Melody's Bistro open for another 6 months, but more importantly, it transformed the restaurant into exactly what Peter and Carmen had envisioned. A community gathering place where music and kindness were valued above profit. Roteiro final extendido, Peter Cetera e Carmen, the Thirta, ni las Iasura caracteres. Marcus Webb never did follow through on his threats to sabotage the restaurant. In the weeks following that confrontational evening, Peter had braced himself for surprise health inspections, mysterious code violations, or any of the underhanded tactics that Carmen had warned him about. But as days turned into weeks and weeks into months, it became clear that Webb had either moved on to easier targets or perhaps recognized that the wave of positive publicity surrounding Melody's Bistro made it too risky to interfere with a business that had clearly captured the community's heart and imagination. The local newspapers had picked up the story of the intimate concert series, framing it as a heartwarming tale of musical renaissance in an age of corporate development. Food bloggers wrote glowing reviews, not just of the restaurant's comfort food menu, but of the unique atmosphere that blended dining with live music in a way that felt both nostalgic and refreshingly authentic. Even the city's tourism board began including Melody's Bistro in their recommendations for visitors seeking genuine Chicago experiences beyond the typical tourist attractions. Whatever the reason for Webb's retreat, Peter was profoundly grateful to focus his energy on building something positive rather than fighting something destructive. The contrast between his former life of litigation and business battles and his current existence centered on music and community could not have been more stark. Where he had once spent his days worrying about market share and profit margins, he now found himself concerned with chord progressions and the emotional well-being of his regular customers. The transformation had not happened overnight, but gradually, like watching a garden bloom through careful tending. Each small success built upon the previous one, creating a momentum that surprised even Peter and Carmen with its power and sustainability. The first concert had been a leap of faith. By the sixth monthly performance, they had established something that felt permanent and precious. 6 months later, as autumn painted the Chicago streets in shades of gold and crimson, Melody's Bistro was thriving in ways that had nothing to do with traditional restaurant metrics. The numbers on the balance sheet certainly looked healthier than they had in years. But the real measure of success could be found in the intangible qualities that made the place feel alive with purpose and joy. The monthly concert series had developed such a following that they maintained a waiting list stretching months into the future. People planned their evenings around the performances, making dinner reservations weeks in advance to ensure they could experience what had become known throughout Chicago as the most intimate musical experience in the city. The concerts featured not only Peter's performances, but also showcased local musicians whose talents Carmen had discovered and nurtured through her extensive network in the music education community. Each performance was unique, carefully curated to create an evening that felt both professional and personal. Carmen had developed a gift for matching musical styles to seasonal moods and audience preferences. October's concert featured jazz standards that complemented the cozy atmosphere, created by flickering candles and the warm colors of fall decorations. December's holiday performance had become so popular that they scheduled 3 separate shows to accommodate demand, featuring both traditional carols and contemporary holiday songs arranged for Peter's distinctive vocal style. The music lesson program that Carmen had developed was booked solid through the following spring, with students ranging from 8-year-old beginners taking their first piano lessons to 70-year-old retirees fulfilling lifelong dreams of learning to play guitar. Carmen had discovered a remarkable gift for teaching that went beyond her formal education credentials. She possessed an intuitive understanding of how to meet each student where they were, whether that meant slowing down to build confidence in a shy child, or challenging an advanced adult student who had been playing casually for years, but wanted to develop more sophisticated technique. The lessons took place during the restaurant's slower afternoon hours, transforming the dining room into an informal conservatory, where the gentle sounds of scales, simple melodies, and Carmen's encouraging voice created a soundtrack of learning and growth. Regular customers had grown accustomed to hearing these musical moments, and many commented that the sounds of instruction and practice added to the restaurant's charm rather than detracting from their dining experience. But perhaps most remarkably, the restaurant had become a beloved neighborhood institution that brought together people of all ages through their shared love of music and community. The demographic that filled Melody's Bistro on any given evening would have been difficult to predict based on traditional restaurant marketing wisdom. Tables might hold a young couple on their first date sitting near a group of retirees celebrating a birthday, with a family including 3 generations gathered around a corner booth to share both a meal and stories about how Peter's songs had provided the soundtrack to their family history. The walls of the restaurant now told the story of its transformation through carefully curated displays of photographs, letters, and memorabilia. Pictures from various concerts showed Peter and Carmen performing together, their musical partnership having evolved into something that felt both professional and deeply personal. Testimonial letters from students and audience members covered one entire wall, sharing stories of how the music program had enriched their lives in unexpected ways. One letter, framed prominently near the piano, was from an elderly gentleman named Robert, who had written, "I lost my wife of 52 years last spring, and I thought my life was over. Then my daughter signed me up for guitar lessons at Melody's Bistro. Carmen's patience and Peter's encouragement helped me discover that music could be a way to honor Margaret's memory, rather than just mourn her absence. Now I play her favorite songs every evening, and I feel connected to her in a way that talking to photographs never provided." Another display featured artwork created by local artists who had been inspired by the musical renaissance taking place in this small corner of Chicago. Watercolor paintings of the restaurant's interior during concerts, pencil sketches of Peter and Carmen performing together, and even abstract pieces that attempted to capture the emotional atmosphere of the monthly performances created a visual representation of the community that had grown around Melody's Bistro. Carmen had transformed from a struggling delivery driver into the restaurant's music director, a title that encompassed everything from teaching piano lessons to organizing community concerts to managing the social media presence that had grown organically from that first grassroots campaign. Her business cards, printed on elegant cream-colored stock, read Carmen Rodriguez, Music Director, Melody's Bistro. But everyone who knew her understood that the title barely captured the scope of her influence on the establishment's success. Her days began early, arriving at the restaurant by 10 in the morning to prepare for afternoon lessons and evening activities. She had developed systems for managing the complex logistics of running multiple programs simultaneously, coordinating lesson schedules with restaurant operations, booking guest performers for the monthly concerts, maintaining relationships with the local music community, and handling the increasing volume of inquiries from people who had heard about Melody's Bistro and wanted to experience its unique atmosphere. But more than that, she had become the heart of an operation that proved every day that businesses could be profitable while still prioritizing human values over purely financial considerations. Her approach to customer service went far beyond traditional hospitality. She remembered the names and personal stories of regular customers, checked in on students who missed lessons, and created an atmosphere where everyone who entered the restaurant felt welcomed and valued. The transformation was perhaps most evident in Carmen herself. The uncertain young woman who had walked through the restaurant's doors 6 months earlier, clutching a delivery bag and apologizing for her very existence, had been replaced by someone who moved through the space with confidence and purpose. She wore her role as music director with quiet pride, understanding that she had found not just a job, but a calling that utilized every aspect of her education, personality, and values. "You know what I learned from all this?" Peter said one evening, as they closed up after a particularly successful concert featuring a local jazz quartet that Carmen had discovered performing at a nearby coffee shop. The audience had been especially enthusiastic, with several people approaching Peter and Carmen after the performance to share personal stories about how the music had touched them. Carmen smiled as she cleaned the piano keys that had become her second home, her fingers moving with the same care and attention she brought to everything she touched. The instrument, a restored 1960s Baldwin baby grand that Peter had purchased specifically for the concert series, had become the centerpiece of the restaurant's transformation. Under Carmen's careful maintenance and daily use, it had developed a tone that seemed perfectly suited to the intimate atmosphere they had created. "What's that?" she asked, though she could see in Peter's expression that he was preparing to share something significant. These end-of-evening conversations had become one of her favorite parts of their routine, moments when the business of running a restaurant and music program gave way to deeper reflections on what they had built together. "I learned that real success isn't about how many people know your name or how much money you have in the bank," Peter replied, his voice carrying the wisdom that comes from having experienced both fame and obscurity, wealth and near poverty, public acclaim and private struggle. "It's about how many lives you touch in a positive way, how much kindness you put into the world, and how well you treat the people who cross your path, especially the ones who can't do anything for you in return." He paused, looking around the restaurant that had become so much more than either of them had originally envisioned. The space held memories now. Not just his personal memories of Sarah and their first date at the original Giovanni's, but collective memories created by hundreds of people who had shared meals, music, and meaningful moments within these walls. "When I bought this place," Peter continued, "I thought I was preserving the past. But what we've created here is something entirely new. It's a place where past and present come together, where music serves its highest purpose of bringing people together and helping them feel less alone in the world." Carmen finished her cleaning routine and moved to straighten the music books and sheet music that were kept on shelves near the piano for use during lessons and performances. Each item was placed with deliberate care, reflecting her understanding that maintaining the physical space was just as important as nurturing the emotional atmosphere they had worked so hard to create. "I've been thinking about something," she said, her voice thoughtful. "When I lost my teaching job, I felt like my identity had been taken away from me. I had defined myself by my profession, by my ability to share music with young people. Driving for the delivery service felt like such a step backward, such a waste of everything I had worked to achieve." She settled into the chair beside the piano, the same spot where she often sat during lessons to provide encouragement and guidance to her students. "But now I realized that losing that job was actually a gift. If I had stayed in the traditional education system, I never would have discovered this different way of teaching, this opportunity to work with people of all ages who choose to be here because they want to learn, not because they have to be in a classroom." Peter nodded, understanding completely what she meant. Ending. His own journey from international recording artist to restaurant owner and community music teacher had taught him similar lessons about the difference between external success and internal fulfillment. "The students I work with now," Carmen continued, "they're here because music means something to them. The 8-year-old who practices piano every day because she wants to play like you someday. The retired businessman who finally has time to learn guitar because his wife always said he had musical hands. The teenager who comes in after school because her friends don't understand why she prefers jazz to pop music, but she knows she can talk about it here without being judged." The examples she cited were not hypothetical. They were real people whose lives intersected with Melody's Bistro on a regular basis. Each represented a different aspect of the community they had built, a different way that music could serve as a bridge between generations, backgrounds, and life experiences. "That's exactly what Sarah used to talk about," Peter said, his voice filled with warmth at the memory. "She always said that the best teachers are the ones who help people discover what was already inside them. You don't just teach piano techniques, Carmen. You teach people to trust their own musical instincts, to believe that they have something worth sharing with the world." As they turned off the lights and locked the door of Melody's Bistro, both Peter and Carmen understood that they had created something that couldn't be measured in dollars or demolished by developers like Marcus Webb. They had created a place where music and kindness lived side by side, where strangers could become friends over shared melodies, and where the simple act of defending someone's dignity could bloom into a beautiful partnership that changed 2 lives forever. The Chicago skyline stretched out before them as they stood on the sidewalk outside the restaurant, the city lights twinkling like earthbound stars. The neighborhood around them was changing rapidly, with new construction and development projects transforming the landscape almost daily. But Melody's Bistro had found its place in this evolving environment, not by fighting change, but by offering something timeless and essential that no amount of development could replicate. "Same time tomorrow?" Carmen asked. Though the question had become purely rhetorical over the past months, their partnership had developed its own rhythm, its own reliable patterns that provided structure for both their professional collaboration and their genuine friendship. "Wouldn't miss it," Peter replied. and they both knew he meant far more than just their next day of work together. He meant the continued building of something precious, the ongoing creation of a space where music could heal and community could flourish, where every day brought new opportunities to prove that kindness and artistry could coexist with financial sustainability and business success. The lesson of that rainy Tuesday evening when they first met lived on in every note played and every act of kindness shown at Melody's Bistro. Sometimes the most important thing you can do is stand up for what's right, even when it costs you everything. Because what you build in the aftermath might be worth more than anything you lost. Their story had become a testament to the transformative power of choosing principle over profit, community over conquest, and music over money. Choices that had created something beautiful and lasting in a world that often seemed to value neither beauty nor permanence. Thank you for watching this heartwarming story about Peter Cetera and Carmen. If this story touched your heart, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring tales about the power of music, kindness, and standing up for what's right. Share in the comments below about a time when someone's unexpected kindness changed your day or even your life. Sometimes the most beautiful partnerships begin with the simplest act of human decency, reminding us all that we have the power to make someone's world a little brighter.